Bedtime story by Margaret Weiss Brown. Some of you probably know it. Margaret Weiss Brown. She's most famously known for Good Night Moon.
Oh, yes.
This was not Good Night Moon. This was a child's good night book. And I loved it so much I had to go seek and find it so I could find my son, for my son to read it to him. It ended with this prayer, and I wrote this prayer. Dear Father, hear and bless thy beasts and singing birds, and guard with tenderness small things that have no words. And as a child, I loved that because it was guarding my kittens and my dolls. And as I grew up, the first line kind of morphed from Dear Father into Great Spirit, and the last line morphed into all those that have no words, be they animals or trees or people who have no voice. How many of you were said bedtime stories, and how many of you did bedtime prayers? We've got quite a few. Well, now it's time to wake up. Still say your bedtime prayers. How many of you still say bedtime prayers? Yay, I got 2 hands. Wait, 3, mine. It's time to wake up. The phrase thoughts and prayers fills our social media, as well as the mouths of politicians and journalists. Our little text screens are filled with little emojis of praying hands, and if you put the dash next to the this and you put the that in the middle, it's like, I prayed for you. And activists are running around carrying signs that say, quote, if only thoughts and prayers were bulletproof. To the climate change thought experiment, which I thought was kind of interesting, which was, quote, if prayers worked, Noah wouldn't have needed an ark. And our immigration crisis. Why can't we use thoughts and prayers to protect our borders? It's what we use to protect our schools. But what really is prayer? And what does it mean to really pray? How many of you pray? We know that you don't pray that much at night, but yeah, we got some kind of not. Yeah, it's kind of a trick question because the answer is actually everyone. The actually is everyone. Prayer is part of the human experience in seeking that which is greater than we are. We don't just call it by names like God in secular society. We don't call it prayer. And we've allowed others to co-opt the words God and prayer for their own agendas. But both come out of an evolutionarily wired need to belong and to understand that we are not, nor are we ever, alone. There's a saying that there's no atheists in foxholes. We've heard this. Yep. Yeah, and of course it's offensive. Because of course there's atheists in foxholes. And actually I looked up because I wanted to know, does our army still dig foxholes? And they do. They don't call them foxholes anymore though. But they still dig trenches to still be able to hide in or to shoot from. And they still pray in them. And, I don't know if actual foxes actually prey in actual foxholes. I'm pretty certain domestic foxes do. There are domestic foxes, by the way. But atheists, nevertheless, without a deity to pray to, do pray in those foxholes. And I suspect that they would also find that sentence that I just said highly offensive. Why? Because it touches on something deep within the fabric of the formation of our country. From the beginning, there was a debate whether we're a Christian nation. We're really fond of saying we're not a Christian nation because we're not. But that was hard won, that we are a plurally religious nation. From the very beginning, our founding fathers argued over national fast days. Can you imagine actually putting in a national fast day today? To national prayer breakfasts, we still have national prayer breakfasts, don't we? And tea parties. For those of you with a history bent, I highly recommend Dr. Reverend Forrest Church, who actually married us, by the way. I know, name dropping, right? What a brilliant, brilliant soul. Deeply missed and left such a legacy. So if you're interested in the history part of the separation of church and state, he's written American Creed. The other book is So Help Me God, which is the actual history of that fight at the very beginning. So it helps you understand a little bit of what's going on now. Sometimes if you look at what's in the fabric of a foundation, you can go, oh, that's where the rent was. That's where the mending needed to happen. It touches, however, on something deeper than simply our national conversation or our national culture. Actually, that goes into something in the fibers of being human, our core feelings of belonging, our core to our feelings of safety. And public prayer, while supposedly an exercise in inclusion, we're including that which is greater than we are to help us, is all too often a clear message of exclusion. At its most tribal level, it says, if you don't believe the way I believe, you don't belong here. Sadly, many ardent supporters of public prayer, whether it's in schools or before Congress or even in local committees, your school boards, your libraries, those well-meaning religious people have no ability, and I want to say that, at this point they don't have the ability, and they need to learn they do have the ability to understand what it means to be exclusionary when they can't see it from their side of the mirror. Which is why it's so very important not to rally against it because it falls on deaf ears, but to insist that all voices start becoming part of the conversation. You don't want to be excluded? You don't have to. You have a seat at the table. What does it mean to add your voice, a Unitarian, Universalist voice, to a conversation? A conversation in a public prayer space. Why should you? Because you belong here. Each and every one of you belongs here, as does everyone else. All those that have no voice, bless them in the day and night, even if some days that feels like you. Prayer takes practice. It takes courage. And I have a hunch that while prayer is natural and essential and in fact unavoidable in small amounts, I mean, we usually just call it wishful thinking or, gosh, I hope I have a parking spot. But real prayer, open-hearted, vulnerable prayer, is rare. And sadly, we have relegated that to fundamentalists of all stripes. It's easier to just dismiss it as snake oil. But is it snake oil? And how oily is a snake really? But no, wait. No, it doesn't stop bullets in the moment. It doesn't stop floods in the moment. But we have substantial evidence, and we would have more studies if there was a way to monetize it. But of course, you can't really monetize salaries of some magical televangelists are pretty monetized. They are. I don't know if they have any data on how their prayers work. It would be really interesting to see because we don't collect that data. How could we? But in his seminal book, Healing Words, Dr. Larry Dossey outlines the possibilities. Those who were prayed for in several studies, and this is across the board, heart patients, cancer patients, regarding pain levels, regarding healing levels, burn victims, burn survivors, in several studies, those that were prayed for, even without knowing they were being prayed for, improved faster. Those that knew they were being prayed for, that agreed to be prayed for, had the highest level. This is significant. It's statistically significant, and we need to do more of those studies. But even without those studies, we need to say, why has the prayer been such a potent tool of the religious right? Because it works. Because it works. People who pray together bond together. They enter into a field of power, and they help change the world. To know that someone is praying for you is a powerful form of caring. And caring and being cared for shifts us in miraculous ways. Kierkegaard famously said, quote, "The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays." Which, of course, is terrifying. Which is why I think most people, they simply bypass both prayer and the actions that flow from prayer. We all say we really want change. I want to change. I want to do better. I want to be this. But really, do we want change? Heck no. We're terrified of change. We want the coffee exactly where it was. I want the water in this cup. I like the blue cup better than the other cup. Thank you. But really, like the water. Thank you for the water. In any cup. We're terrified of change. We're terrified because it's vulnerable. Is there anything more vulnerable than being changed? That moment where you've got to be all wet and gooey coming out of the cocoon? That's terrifying. Prayer places you there. C.S. Lewis said, I pray because I'm helpless. I pray because the need flows out of me all the time, waking and sleeping. It doesn't change God. It changes me. But of course, I'm way ahead of myself, and I probably poked a whole bunch of people who either don't want to be changed and don't believe in God because they've got a definition of God that probably isn't my definition of God anyway, and a definition of prayer that certainly isn't my definition. But I'm way ahead of myself. I mean, what's prayer? What is prayer? I grew up with a lot of you jokes because I grew up you. So one of the common ones. So do y'all just pray to who it may concern? Whom? Whom is the object of the verb? The verb is to pray. It's not who, but oh, wait. So what is prayer? And is it possible to pray without a noun to pray to? Prayer is reaching. Prayer is seeking. Prayer is a free and responsible search for the truth. It is in our principles. We can juxtapose this with meditation. Meditation is allowing, being. The lines, of course, eventually blur. You can enter into the garden by many gates, but the fruit that you gather on the orchard is different. Both, I think, are essential. All prayers in all faiths, and all faiths praying, even those with no faith, fall into general categories. 4, they've been sorted. People do this kind of thing. This one goes here, this one goes there. First, adoration, which is praise or honoring the ancestors. Contrition or confession, which is honest self-inventory or seeking forgiveness. Petition or intercession, which is asking or requesting or sometimes demanding. Thanksgiving, gratitude, which gives rise to 4 actions of prayers, which Reverend Wilkstrom, the former director of worship and music resources for the UUA, and he's actually just retired as a minister, and he's going back into chaplaincy. He sorts these beautifully in a book that he's titled Simply Pray. You can get it from Skinner House. I know I'm like a little bibliography today. He sorts them into naming, knowing, listening, and loving. It's really accessible. Naming, knowing, listening, and loving. Anne Lamott has simplified them into 3 in a wonderful book by the same title, which is Help! Thanks! Wow! That's pretty much, isn't it? That's pretty much it. Many of us have become far more comfortable with the word meditation than prayer, yet much of what we call meditation is actually prayer. It's reaching out, it's seeking, it's requesting, it's that which is greater than we are. The clearest example of what I can give is what we call meta-meditation. You're familiar with it? May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be at peace. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at peace. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be at peace. And I've done whole sermons on that one, because that's the one I use all the time. But it's not a meditation. It's a prayer. It's a request. It sends you there. If you sit into that space, into the space where all beings are happy, all beings are healthy, all beings are at peace, that is meditation. When you reach for it, it's prayer. And we've been unconsciously comfortable with prayers of many other languages and many other faiths. I mean, kumbaya in the patois. Don't dismiss patois. Patois is indeed a language, even if we want to correct it into come by here. It actually is a way of speaking that others understand the way you're speaking. It is a language. Yes, it doesn't sound like you can understand it. Yes, come by here is a translation that you can understand. But if you listen to the gullah, they understood what it meant. It's not just a campfire song. It was a plea of a kidnapped, enslaved, freed people. And when you sing it with that meaning, because there's incredible power, because they are still here. And that song is too. We've become, yesterday I was in a class called Be Moved. Oh, it was wonderful. It's up at Buckman Bridge. I highly recommend it. I can't remember her name, Kathleen. It's called Be Moved. Anyway, part of the songs that she was playing, we danced to I'm going to mess up her name. Snatam? Someone knows this? Snatam? Kar? She's a wonderful Sikh praise singer. Absolutely beautiful. While she sings to the universal spirit in all of us, but also to her guru. And someone noted that Oprah, she's a favorite of Oprah, and she also had heard the same song in her yoga class. And yes, I play her music at home. And yes, much of it is prayer. At its most basic, prayer is a conversation that you have with that which is greater than you, more than you are, which is beyond your sight, which is intangible and yet actual because you have felt it. You have experienced it. It's that which always holds you, even when you forget. I mean, you can call it, maybe for you, it's a field of unconditional love, or the great mystery, or the family human. That faith in our common humanity, that collective common humanity that we all share, which is greater than any one of us, that too is reaching out in prayer. Prayer is a way to connect to belonging, and we all belong, no exceptions. But how do you do this thing? How do you do this prayer thing? I don't know quite how to do this prayer thing. I mean, I want to kind of pray, but do I have to light a candle? Maybe. Maybe for you light a candle. Do I have to, dip my fingers in some water? Maybe, to connect you with what's now. I don't know. But pray simply, consciously. That's the key, simply and consciously. But, there's a saying that I love, that someday I'm going to embroider on a pillow, if I actually did things like embroidered on pillows. But, for those of you that do, nothing simple is ever easy. In fact, simplicity is probably the hardest thing you can possibly do. So to say, just simply pray, huh? So teach me to pray. I actually have someone asked me to teach them to pray. And it's in the Bible. Luke 11 starts with, teach me to pray. Teach me to pray like John taught you. Like John taught his disciples. Jesus was a disciple first, before he had disciples. The chapter is most known for its famous prayer. Now we call it the Lord's Prayer. Most of you learned it at some point in your childhood. Some of you did not. And it always begins with Our Father. But before it was codified, before it was frozen in translation, it was the answer to this question: teach me how to pray. Now when people do the Lord's Prayer, you find people finding a home in it, or wanting to find the miraculous powers of it, or people feeling really poked by it. I had someone actually turn to my friend who is Jewish and say, yeah, but you can say that prayer too. It's a universal prayer. And it can be, but it also isn't. We're back to that inclusion-exclusion line very, very clearly. But was the answer to a question, teach me to pray. Now, as much as I love all the variations of this prayer, and oh my gosh, the new envisioning language is kind of wonderful. You've got Our Father becoming, O birther of the cosmic cosmos. O mother, father, egg. I kind of like that one. The universe is an egg. You have simple ones, which are just creator. But the focus has become on specific language over the idea that this was a lesson. And in the new translations for the Aramaic, they're really Aramaic are really intriguing. And Pope Francis has approved of the new translation of the line, which makes all kinds of sense. I mean, it's like, oh, well, of course that's a better actual translation for the Greek. God isn't going to lead us into temptation. He's going to shield us from temptation or help us not follow into temptation. Makes sense. And there's this wonderful Greek word in the oldest piece that we have, epaision, the word bread. I could do a whole sermon just on this, and I just might, just because epaision, I can't hardly even say it. It doesn't occur anywhere else in Greek. How cool is that? But I'm way, way off topic on this, because really, what if this is not a teaching of a prayer to say? What if it is a lesson in how to pray? Our Father simply becomes Jesus calling out to his Father. Abba, Abba, are you there? Abba is intimate, not the formal. He had no need actually to name his mother. He knew who his mother was, physically, actually, as did all the disciples. She was right there. What if the teaching was to the unknown, Abba, followed by honoring all the names the unknown has? Hallowed be thy name. Reaching out, intimate. In Matthew 6, we're taught not to pray for the attentions of others in public. Huh? Really? Yeah, really, actually. For those of you who feel that, people are by the book, people usually are always picking and choosing by the book, and I'm doing that right now, just to be very clear, because, the book is like that. That's what makes it a sacred text. But it's very clear, we're taught specifically not to pray for the attentions of others in public, but to pray in private. To close the door is what Matthew 6 says. Close the door. You have no secrets before God. That which always surrounds you, unconditional love, the field, unconditional regard, the morphic, whatever you call it, there's no secrets in reality between you and that which is you with a capital Y. But you need privacy to be safe. Emotionally, you need privacy, but also culturally, depending on your culture. And I'm not just speaking of someone who is Muslim trying to find their 5 days to prayer in a highly Christianized environment. I'm talking about a young boy who's got a crush on another young boy in middle school. I'm talking about a fundamentalist woman who's discovered that in her 3rd trimester her baby isn't going to make it, and they're recommending an abortion and she doesn't know what to do. I'm talking about those moments where you really don't know what to decide, and you have to have a conversation, and you're so scared that nobody else is available for you to have that conversation with until you sort it out. That's what prayer is. That's why we're taught. It's intimate. Abba, Ima, mother, tree. Oh, air, breathe into me. I am helpless, I am lost, I'm alone. Help. Some days the conversation honestly might look like, gee, God, you suck. What the hell? How could you let that happen? At which point the answer might be, yeah, how could you let that happen? I'm really hurt now. I'm really helpless right now. Oh, whoa, that's it. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Helpless. Helplessness, that's where we really start pulling over those spiritual bypasses of positive thinking. We're not going to go into that wound. We're not going to say, I am helpless. Of course we're not helpless. We're powerful people. We can do anything. Look at how we've changed the world. Everybody here is a powerful person. And we are. And part of the reason we're powerful is because we're also so vulnerable and so helpless. And here's the thing. We can pray even when other actions are not possible. Prayer is always possible. Even if we don't believe it is, it's the seeking impulse to want one thing better, one thing different, one more connection. You want to be a little less lonely? You want others to be a little less hurt? It's reaching out in joy, Oh my God. You are here. You are here. You are here. Wow. It's reaching out in despair. Help. And finding you're not alone. Thanks. The act of prayer reminds us the truth with a capital T. You're never alone. And when you allow that full open heart to reach out, you will find that which is seeking you. The truth of the world is, all the world is one. One of the fathers of ethical chaplaincy, Dr. Paul Tournier, says, quote, "It is impossible to overemphasize the immense need humans have to really be listened to be taken seriously, to be understood. It is impossible to overemphasize the immense need humans have to really be listened to be taken seriously, and to be understood." Honest, daily, integrated prayer practice helps us fill that need. Prayers can be silent. They can be spoken, sung, danced, planted, painted, baked, eaten. Since ancient times, we've prayed with elements. We've prayed with props, beads, candles. In fact, the word bead comes from the word bead, B-E-D-E, which means prayer. And prayer beads are one of the most ancient practices that we know. And I love leading prayer bead workshops. I'm just going to throw that out because guess what? All faiths have them, except for Judaism, which uses knots instead of beads. There's even UU prayer beads. There are. Might be fun. Just throwing that out there. But you don't need anything to pray. You don't need anything to pray but a willing heart. John Chapman tells us, pray as you can, not as you can't. Last month I was in Switzerland. Yay. Golly, it was gorgeous. I learned so much about cows and dogs and people and air and water. It was beautiful. Last month I was in Switzerland when a mentally ill, dangerously provoked young man opened fire with a weapon of war easily obtained in our country, surrounded by people who had no idea how that could possibly happen. In a country that has been at war now longer for those that are currently enlisting have been alive, massacring 22 people at a Walmart called the Mexican Walmart because its location in El Paso and its customer base, while I watched a hurricane barrel across the Atlantic, destroying the Bahamas and heading straight for my family. I stood at the foot of a glacier that is melting too fast, having taken my 8th airline flight this year, as Greta Thunberg arrived in New York after 15 days at sea. All I could do is pray. 4 types of prayer. I checked every box. Please forgive me. I am sorry. I love you. Thank you. Help. Thanks. Wow. All I could do was pray. And then do the job I was there to do, which was teach and learn. Whatever its form, prayer also creates an internal shift. As renowned theologian Reinhard Niebuhr noted, prayer does not change things. Prayer changes people, and people change things. Prayer does not change things. Prayer changes people, and people change things. Prayer is not hearing voices. Prayer is acquiring a voice. Michael Salwester of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Long Beach, California is quoted as saying, "Prayer is an intimate conversation with myself in all my vulnerability, facing fears that may be beneath the surface or staring me in the face. In prayer, I admit that I am powerless to shape the world to my desires and wants, but I have the power to choose to respond. Prayer grants me the courage to face the mistakes I've made and the harms I've caused others. Prayer exposes the bounty of my life, for which I am grateful." The inside of the wedding band I wear is inscribed with a prayer written by Reverend Niebuhr. It brings me back not only to my marriage, but to the whole circle of life. God, give us the grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things that should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish one from the other in every moment. In every moment. But when words fail, let every step be your prayer as you walk on this holy ground, because everywhere is holy ground, as is every face you see. My prayer for you: be prayerful. Reach out. That which you are seeking is seeking you. Amen. Namaste. Namaha. And so it is.